Well, hello. Decided to do another sewing machine video, a little tour, not a demonstration because I'm assuming you know how to sew, and if you don't, there's better videos than this. First video I did on a sewing machine was a Kenmore, middle of the road machine. So I decided, well, I can either do something fancier or do something more basic. So this time I've decided to go with what would technically be the bottom of the line machine in my collection. The simplest machine with the least features, and here it is, and you can tell by the name Spartan, which is pretty much what it is. We'll take a closer look at it in a couple of minutes, but it has an interesting history, even though it's a very simple machine. In 1907, Singer introduced a machine called the 66, which at the time was considered a masterpiece of engineering. Shortly thereafter, they came out with a smaller version of it called the 99. And the 99 was what was called a three-quarter machine, because basically what they did was they took the 66 and shortened it. They didn't make anything else smaller, they just shortened it. But they continued to use the same running gear in the machine. To shorten the shafts, but it had the same gears, the same bushings, the same bearings, same mechanism. It was exactly the same, except they just shortened the shafts, shortened the castings, and they made a very small machine. And which was considered at the time actually one of the first portable machines, even though the 99, when it came out, was still before World War I. But they were cast iron, so even the cast iron machines weighed 22 pounds. And that thing was in production until the mid-1950s. The 66 and the 99, I believe both of them, were in production until the mid-1950s. And it was sort of like the Model T of sewing machines. It was like, this was a sewing machine that everybody owned. It was by far the most common machine. And that leads to the story of the Spartan. So we'll zoom in and we'll take a closer look at the Spartan. Now by the late 1950s, the 66 and the 99 had gone out of production. And Singer had some really innovative machines. But they wanted to keep something really cheap and basic in their product line. So they took the old 66, the old three-quarter machine, and stripped it of anything fancy. They took off the Singer decals and they just put Spartan on it. Singers used to have very fancy decal work, where they were very decorative. A lot of people own Spartans, don't even know they're Singers, because they have to look down there to see where it says Singer. They took the light off it, although you could buy a light, but it did not come with a light. They took the automatic stop off the bobbin, so you had to keep an eye on the bobbin while it was winding. And basically just kind of removed anything that was like an extra function. But they kept all of the original running gear that really dates back to 1907. And this is really kind of the last in the line of those kind of classic machines that we recognize in this shape. But because they kept all of that, it's built like an absolute tank. It is cast iron. Even though it's very small, you know, you can lift it up with, you know, you can stick one hand under there. Even though it's very small, it is extremely strong. It has a drop-in bobbin mechanism, which was really quite revolutionary at the time. And for quite a while, actually, this was my go-to machine because I could just keep it. I kept it on the floor, and if I had to sew something, I would just pick it up. And it has the features that you need. It's got stitch length and reverse, but it is a straight stitch only machine. It does not do zigzag. It doesn't do anything. It is the absolute most basic machine possible. I'm going to turn it around here so you can get a look at the back side and the motor. I had to put a new belt on it. That's why that belt's kind of an orange color. They even you know, a lot of Singers, they had special plugs for the electric motor. In this case, the plug is just wired right into the motor, again, makes it simpler. It's a little extra something that's not there. If you wanted a light, you could buy a light and you could bolt it on, but it did not come with a light. It didn't even come with a case. It came basically in a kind of a plastic pan to keep the mechanism from rubbing against the table. And it didn't come with an instruction book. It essentially came with a pamphlet, and that was about all there was. Still has the nice decorative work on the face. So these were like extremely strong machines, but extremely basic. Two last things I'll mention about the motor. One of the odd things about this, even though this was a bottom of the line machine, Singer did make one change, and they gave this thing an unusually powerful motor. It was a 0.8 amp motor, which was actually quite a bit more powerful than many of their other machines at the time. Why they did that, I don't know. But it was sort of the one bonus you got from buying the Spartan was the quite powerful motor. Another thing that I find kind of interesting is when you consider the long history of this machine, is when this machine was built, because you can look these up based on the serial number. And they actually started making these in the late 1950s. They actually started making these the year I was born. They started making them in 58, I believe. But this machine is actually from 1961. And I think that's interesting because this is a design, and this basically is the 99, which comes from 1911. Okay, they started making the 66 in 1907. Shortened it to the 99 in 1911, and this is essentially a 99 manufactured in the 1960s. And it's quite odd that you would see a machine that is basically would have looked, this is what sewing machines would have looked like in the 1800s, and they were still making this in the 1960s when it was extremely old-fashioned. But I think these probably sold for about $60 in the US, which was very cheap. So you got an incredibly old-fashioned machine built basically with steel forgings, iron castings, and is absolutely indestructible. So there it is. That is actually my bottom of the line machine, my 1961 Singer Spartan.